two brown girls from Toronto into Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and we meet in Switzerland in Lugano for the first time.
I'm booking a one-way ticket and this is our timeline. And I was like, shit, yeah, we really got to make this happen. So we decided we were going to leave. And that's when my Bitcoin journey started. Okay. Because when I started seeing things on the road and talking to people, that's when it actually started hitting me way more than all the podcasts he would make me listen to or like the X posts that he would make me read. And so it was actually in Egypt. So we started our travels from Egypt and we went all the way down to Cape Town.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. I'm your host, Saida Gomez. Did you know that you could travel with Bitcoin? Well, if you didn't, I'm here with the lovely Anuja from Travel with Bitcoin to talk about her Bitcoin origin story, Travel, and how she managed to combine the two. Anuja, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited to tell all your listeners a little bit about how they can actually pay for experiences with Bitcoin.
Oh, I like that. Instead of travel with Bitcoin, pay for your experiences with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's really nice. And I think, when did we start following each other on X? Was it like last year or something?
Yes. So I've been following you for some time, but we met in person for the first time in Lugano. So in October. Yeah.
Okay, so how dope is that? We're both from Toronto. I think I'm older than
Yeah.
you. But we meet like two brown girls from Toronto into Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and we meet in Switzerland in Lugano for the first time.
Crazy. That's just how the world works. What can we say?
Especially the world connected to Bitcoin. So let's get into it. When did you first
Okay.
hear about Bitcoin?
hmm
How did it appeal to you? Like, what resonated with you? What made you
hmm
go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
hmm Okay, so I always like sharing the story because it kind of starts off as like the typical husband and wife, when the husband is into Bitcoin and he's trying to convince or at least just get his partner, girlfriend, significant other on board. That's what we hear a
Uh-huh.
lot because let's be honest, Bitcoin is very much male dominated. But we will soon change that. So that was kind of the story with me and my husband, to be honest, because he got into Bitcoin, I want to say about 8-ish years ago now.
Uh-huh.
But he went so deep into it that it almost made me repel even the topic and discussion of Bitcoin. And it's almost like, when someone tries to force something down your throat, you're just like, I don't want it. I don't want to listen about it. I don't want to listen to it. Where it came down to a point where we would literally have arguments and I would wake up and be like, today, no talking about Bitcoin. Like it got to that point. And you know what? Like I always found it interesting. So I do come from like the tech space and like I did understand like the technology behind it, but I still saw it primarily as an investment. I saw it as a tool or a way to just make more money. I didn't really
Uh-huh.
understand Bitcoin for what it is. And so it wasn't actually until about 2.5 years ago, my husband and I had decided that we were going to take some time off to travel. We've been thinking about taking a little sabbatical for a long time, especially after COVID, and just things
Yeah.
made us realize that we are spending so much time in front of screens. And we
Uh-huh.
both, even though we're both, right? And that could be said even now, it still applies, but especially during COVID. And even though we're both Indian, we grew up in Canada, so majority of our life we have really only seen Canada and like the Canadian lifestyle. And so we had this like idea in our heads that like we want to take some time off, take sabbatical, go see what else is out there and see if we can make a home somewhere outside of Canada for a little while. And if that's something we even want to do, we just didn't want to keep wondering what if later on if we weren't able to
Yeah.
leave. And it was a very tough decision to make because, it obviously impacts so many aspects of your life, your family, your friends, you're leaving your people, you're leaving your job. So, like, that financial stability was a huge one for me.
Yeah.
So, I was definitely the one between us that kept pushing the timeline, where it got to a point where he was just like, I'm booking a one-way ticket and this is our timeline. And I was like, shit, yeah, we really got to make this happen. But yes, so we decided we were going to leave. And that's when my Bitcoin journey started. Okay. Because when I started seeing things on the road and talking to people, that's when it actually started hitting me way more than all the podcasts he would make me listen to or like the X posts that he would make me read. And so it was actually in Egypt. So we started our travels from Egypt and we went all the way down to Cairo, all the way down to Cape Town.
Yeah.
We stayed kind of on the east side of Africa and we did it by bus because we're like, make it an adventure. Why not? So yeah, we were in Egypt and we had just converted US dollars to Egyptian pounds. And then we met with like a bunch of locals at some restaurant and they're like, don't do that. Don't go to the bank and get Egyptian pounds for US dollars because like we'll give you more Egyptian pounds for your US dollars. And that to me, for the
Yeah.
first
So
time
like
that
black
I
market kind of thing. Yeah.
exactly. So that to
Yep.
me was the first time I experienced like a black market rate for US
Yep.
dollars. And I think for many of us that are like sitting in the West, in our little bubble, and we hear about all the news that we see and what's going on in the world. And yeah, we're sitting, in Toronto in Canada. We're like, yeah, 6% inflation. I think I'll be fine. It's okay. It's still pretty bad, but like when you kind of see it in front of you and you talk to these, really young kids that have just graduated
Yeah.
and they don't have a lot of hope of how they'll even get out of this cycle because inflation is so terrible. They
Yep.
don't know how to hold their purchasing power. It's not like they can just go buy real estate and not everyone can afford to
Yep.
buy, you know, stocks or mutual funds. And like those are all concepts that
Yep.
the West is very used to that majority of the global South is not, right? And
Yep.
so that's when it kind of started clicking. And I was like, well, I mean, if it's happening here, it could happen in different parts of the world. It could happen to us in Canada. And I think that's really what made me want to question or at least
Mhm.
start taking it more seriously about how broken our system is. What is the history of money? What does it mean when, good money outweighs bad money? Like all those concepts that I kept hearing from him, I was actually intrigued to like curious to take a deeper look. So that's kind of, that's when it clicked for me. And then when we continued our travels and we went to Uganda, like we stayed there for a while because we have some amazing friends there. And I think once we got to Uganda, we were also really tired. So we're like, we
Yeah.
just need a break and just, get a bit of a routine. We were just feeling really unhealthy too because we were eating out all the time and the constant moving around. So we decided we were just gonna, pause for a little bit and just, take a breather. And that's when I actually witnessed my first Bitcoin circular economy. I didn't even know
Sweet.
really the concept of it or anything like that, but like seeing, a food vendor on the side of the street and then someone that does haircuts and then a lady that sells perfume, they're all accepting Bitcoin. And I'm just like, wow, like when you see it happen in a different part of the world and you talk to these small business owners as to how long they've been doing it and what they've been able to do because they've been accepting Bitcoin and saving Bitcoin, they've been able to renovate their little, vendor,
Yep.
small like shops into something bigger. And you're just like, holy shit, like this is real.
This is
Um,
real.
yeah, so it was those experiences, those conversations that made me want to understand it differently. And I started looking at it as money versus before it was, it's just an investment or it's just another way to make more money. So that's kind of a little bit
That's
of the origin story.
so there are a few strings that I want to pull on.
Yeah.
The first like two big things that came to mind is the
Hmm.
couples dynamic when it comes to Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And then the fact that traveling really does open your eyes. I find that people who have traveled and not not business trips because you're
Hmm.
still in sort of like in a bubble,
A
but
bubble.
you've really yeah, totally, like your company pays for everything. It's not the same. But when you travel on your own and you're there local, you see like the use cases plural for Bitcoin. But before
Hmm.
we get to like talk more about the travel aspect, the
Hmm.
couple's dynamic because
Hmm.
I was like with my husband, it was the opposite. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this thing is amazing." Like sending him
Right.
podcasts, articles, whatever.
Hmm.
And I think he
Hmm.
had or he developed the same kind of resistance that you had. Like it's like, like as soon as I mentioned Bitcoin, he was like, "I don't want to hear it. Like please
Here.
stop." Like and it would cause arguments
Yeah.
between us. It would cause like so many different things because for me, it clicked and it just made so much sense. Whereas for him, he was like you say, because I mean, we're both very much grounded in traditional finance in terms of like financial instruments and stuff. And so
Mhm.
breaking out of that is very challenging. Like initially,
For
you don't
sure.
have the incentive to do so.
Yeah. No, totally. And now I get it. Being on the other side, I get the passion to want
Yeah,
to, help your loved ones understand what
exactly.
this
Yeah.
is, right? Like I totally get it. But I think sometimes we can also come off so strong. And I think I've realized
Hmm.
that with my friends after, right? Because once it
Hmm.
clicked for me, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go tell all my girlfriends about this. But you know,
Yeah,
it just doesn't. I think for everyone it clicks in a different way, and I think that's what we have
absolutely.
to be a little bit patient about and kind of keep reminding them, kind of keep showing them, and then they'll eventually come around. But if we just like word vomit all these like things, they're gonna get, it's like kind of scary, it's intimidating, and they're gonna be like,
It is.
I'm fine, like I'm just gonna put my money in the bank, just leave me alone.
Yeah, I totally
So
agree. And the other thing
yeah.
too that I didn't necessarily realize is that in talking about a lot of this stuff, you're actually shattering someone's worldview, someone's perception of reality,
Great
because
point.
most
Mm-hmm.
people have no clue about the banking system, that it's fiat, that
Mm-hmm.
it's printed. Like,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
there's still this concept that even if it's not said explicitly, that somehow like fiat money is like tethered to gold, for example, that
For sure.
inflation is only because of conflicts in the world, that,
World. Mhm.
inflation has nothing to do with its fundamental definition, which is the increase in money supply.
That is such a good point. And it's like we all went to school, and even like after years of working, being in corporate, I'm like, these are just basic things that I didn't one even think about or
Yeah.
question because it's
Yeah.
just the norm. It's just what you do. Or like, you do remember during COVID, we got I forgot what it's called when we all got like some additional like money, right? During COVID, because a lot of us couldn't go to work. Didn't
Oh,
that
I'm in
happen in the States
Switzerland.
as well?
Our system
Oh
was a bit
yeah, that's
different.
why.
Like companies
Okay, yeah, yeah,
applied
yeah.
for the equivalent of like the
Okay.
PPP loans. Yeah.
Yeah, something similar happened back in Canada and the US, but we weren't sitting there being like, "Oh, did they just like print more money?" No, we were just like, "Yay, we got some free
Yeah.
cash." That's what you're thinking at that time. So, yeah, totally agree.
So you guys made the decision to travel. You started in
Mhm.
Cairo, you went down to Cape Town,
Mhm.
then you went and
Mhm.
explored East Africa.
Mhm.
Were you able to, like, throughout your journey, use Bitcoin in transactions, or was it? Well, I guess the answer is no, because you did talk about exchange rates on the black market versus going to
Mhm.
the bank. But
Yep.
did you like try? Like, were there some countries that were a little
Yes.
more friendly and open than others?
Yes. Okay, so it's funny because when we both started this trip, like my goal was travel, experience, culture. Like my husband's name is Santosh, but his goal was, of course, on the travel side, but he also wanted to visit as many Bitcoin circular economies as we could across our travels. So I would say we definitely found quite a few places where we could spend our Bitcoin. But I have to say that was because of word of mouth. It was because people
Mhm.
knew that we were coming. We had made connections way like months before that, hey, we're going to be in Kenya at this time. We're going to be in Uganda. We're going to be in Malawi. And, somehow because the community is one small but very strong, we were able to
Yeah.
get connected to people very easily. And because these small circular economies were being built, they're all growing now. We always found like at least one restaurant or like a place where I got my nails done. We
Mhm.
actually did quite a few tourism activities with Bitcoin as well. We went on a safari, we went gorilla trekking, we went whitewater rafting, we did like an overnight safari as well. So yeah, there was quite a few that we were able to do. But now, mind you, that took a lot of work to actually find. It wasn't easily
Yeah.
accessible. And maybe I'm like jumping the gun here, but because of that experience, we had this idea towards the end of our travels, thinking back and reflecting that, okay, if we're crazy enough to want to travel with Bitcoin, to find places and people that accept it and understand it, we know there are other people that are going to want to do the same.
Most
Maybe not
definitely.
now, but next, 5, 8, 10 years, people are going to start realizing that obviously this is money. I need to live my life. I can't keep hodling it forever, right?
Yeah.
And I want to spend it on things that brings me happiness and joy. And
Yeah.
I think travel is a big part of that. So yeah, sorry, maybe I jumped the gun a little bit there,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
not
that
at
was
all.
kind of
Continue.
how the idea came to us towards the end of the trip is, let's make it easier for the travelers to travel with Bitcoin. Let's make it easier. Let's create a platform for that. So ultimately, Travel with Bitcoin was born. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's such so I from a marketing standpoint,
Hmm.
I've read a few reports over the past like 2 years, I would say, and it
Hmm.
seems as though like things are shifting away from sort of tangible luxury items like status symbols more towards
Yeah.
experiences. So I think that from
Yeah.
that perspective, if what I've read is correct, it's
Yeah.
definitely a good direction to head into. And the other thing about travel that's so amazing, like people, you really have to travel, is that all of those things that you've read,
Hmm.
especially if you like you mentioned earlier, like you've never really left your city or your country, you're still very much exposed and influenced by local media,
Yeah.
even if you're on social media, like even if you have contacts elsewhere, the dominant
Mm.
messages are always communicated through a very Western lens. And when you
Hmm.
travel, you're like, holy shit, I was living in a
This
matrix.
is
Like, this is not true.
I'm so glad you bring this up because you will not believe how many times when I tell people that we traveled across Africa by bus and all that stuff, they're like, are you crazy? One, why would you do that? Was it safe? Did you get
Yeah,
robbed? Like,
really.
it was just all those questions because that's what we think about, when we think of first, Africa is a continent. So
Yeah,
even
it's not
even
a
when we talk about
country.
Africa, yeah, even when we talk about Africa, I feel like a lot of us still talk about it as like one entity when it's not. Like every country is different in its own way. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I want to say it like as loud as I can to everyone that I meet is that we felt so safe. So safe. And of course, you have to take your normal precautions that you do when you travel, right? Like try not to go out too late at night. Don't trust
Yeah.
strangers, like your typical stuff. Like if you do those
Something you would do in
things,
Scarborough, like, you
oh
know?
my God, thank you. Literally, I would do that in Brampton at like when I
Yeah.
go to visit my parents. Yes. Just to being mindful of all that. Like, And that's what we did. And we had no issues. People
Yeah.
were actually super friendly. They were just excited. They want to show you, their country, their food, their culture. Everyone was really friendly, like to a point where I had left my wallet in this small, like off the grid hotel in Malawi. I completely forgot my wallet. We had left the city and gone somewhere else, like 8 hours away at this point. And then I'm like, oh my God, I forgot my wallet. So we call, and then they have found it. They were trying to contact us. And they literally, like, he wasn't the owner, but he was part of the team, literally took an 8-hour bus to come
Oh,
and give us that
wow.
wallet. Yeah. Like, it's, I just feel like a lot of us don't have the right perception of places because of what
Mhm,
you said. It's like,
mhm.
it's whatever the influencer's posting or whatever the
Yeah,
media is showing you or whatever clickbait thing that is out there
yeah,
is getting your attention versus actually going and seeing and experiencing it for
yeah,
us and having your own opinion. So
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. The other
Yeah.
thing that traveling has exposed me to, and this is again so totally basic, but
Okay.
as a Canadian, I'm like, yeah, like obviously there's the US dollar, but the
hmm
Canadian, like, it's Canada. Our money is like legit. Oh yeah,
I
try
literally
spending like Canadian cash
Swiss.
in any establishment, and you'll see what they say. What is this?
Exactly, right? Like, not a lot of people not a lot of people even really think about the Canadian dollar. Because
Yeah.
anytime if we're traveling, we're like, oh, like we think in our head, oh, how much would this be in dollars? And they'll tell us the US dollar rate. I'm like, no, we're on the broke dollar. We're on the Canadian broke dollar,
The broke
But
dollar standard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yep.
Yeah, and then you get into like exchange rates and stuff. The Canadian dollar, or what is BTC sessions? I think it's either BTC sessions or
Mhm.
Francis Pouillot. They call it the Canadian moose shekel.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
The exchange rate has just collapsed against the Swiss
It's
franc. And
terrible.
so any
Mhm.
savings I had for sentimental reasons, I kept like one account open in Canada. I
Mhm.
just saw my purchasing power like get eviscerated. And I was
Mhm.
like, wow, like this is
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Geopolitics, central banks playing with interest rates, they don't care about me. They have whatever agenda they have in mind, but
Yep.
they could care less about the fact that, I
Totally.
started working when I was 13. I've been saving
Yeah.
since I'm 13. They don't care.
They don't care. They care about is that you keep a minimum balance. Otherwise, they're going to charge you interest
Yeah.
because that's ultimately that is what they care about.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's
have you persuaded any of your like friends who maybe were once resistant to Bitcoin to at least be open to it or travel, or is it still like in the development phase?
Definitely not travel.
Mhm,
But I have definitely gotten to a point where they understand it a little bit more. I've made sure they all have like a wallet. They all understand the concept of self-custody,
mhm.
that they know that they need to save the seed phrase. They understand that component of it. And I've made sure that, during birthdays or any special occasions, I do give them Bitcoin. So I'm like, even if you're not buying it, I want to make sure you have some. So we'll give some to them. But we also do have a few friends now that have started kind of DCAing, right? So buying a little bit every month, not a lot, but it's a huge progress from when we
Yeah.
first started. But honestly, I would say like all our friends are on like a different stage. Like some have really, taken the initiative to learn, and some are kind of just still in that beginning, unsure, not sure when the exchange rate drops, they'll message or, things like that. But it's a tough one with friends and family,
Yeah.
because you don't want to ruin relationships or, like you said, or break their, reality of how they're saving their money right now. And you don't want to be like, if you don't do this, you're going to be screwed. I've done that with my best friend because I know I can tell her this, but with a lot of your friends, like it's tough conversation to have. So like maybe like what's worked for you with your friends? Like is there something that like, makes them be like, "Oh no, like I should start thinking about this more." Something?
Well, I think that time is
Mhm.
a good remedy. I had two friends
Mhm.
message me. One who was like, initially she's open-minded and she's traveled a
Mhm.
lot. She and her husband have lived in so many different countries. So
Mhm.
initially she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but like you're pretty serious and you're pretty square. So, I'm
Okay.
just going to buy a little bit. And I set her up
Nice.
on a platform here in Switzerland, and she was
Mhm.
DCAing.
Mhm.
And they're in Asia now. And like she'll message me and she'll say, like, thanks for telling me about Bitcoin. Cause I think the price was around, I want to say maybe like 25 or 30, like the exchange rate was
Wow.
25 or 30. So she's
Yeah.
actually stuck with it and she's a
Nice.
DC'd a little bit. So she'll like
Okay.
message me and say thank you.
Nice.
Another friend, she messaged me and she said, I should have listened to you, So it's like it is kind of touch and go. And
Yeah.
the thing that I've had to pull back a lot on recently
Mhm.
is so my daughter, she's 6, and we do a lot
Mhm.
of different things, and I'm starting to be more and more, like, friendly with the other moms and stuff, and the other dads,
Nice.
and
Nice.
Geneva is, like, a banking town, and so some
Mm.
institutions offer, different, like, I guess, services to
Mhm.
their, private clients or high net worth individuals. Some
Mm.
don't. You can buy
Okay.
Bitcoin everywhere here. Like there's a
Oh.
shopping center called Manor that's had a Bitcoin ATM in it forever, it feels like.
Oh,
In
nice.
every single
Okay.
post office, you can buy card wallets. You can buy it
Mhm.
everywhere. But surprisingly, there's so many people who are just like they don't know.
They
And so
don't.
yeah,
Oh,
and there's a lot of politics
interesting.
behind it. So I have to like
Mm.
be cautious in certain circumstances about how I say
Mhm.
things or not say things
Mhm.
at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fine balance between like when to push and when to just like keep your mouth shut, right? And especially in a social setting as you're getting to like build relationships and things like that, it's you just kind of have to navigate it in a good way because you don't want to come off at like super maxi like this is the
Yeah.
right way and it's just yeah, we're all people. We all have to figure out the best way to like still have connections, human connections without trying to ruin those relationships. So,
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
And I think
tough.
there's like an aspect of cognitive dissonance as well because
Yeah.
I like to put makeup on, I like to like
Mhm.
dress a certain way and stuff. And I open
Mhm.
my mouth and I find people are like, "What?"
What?
Like
They're not
who is he?
expecting it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Fair, fair.
So it
Yeah, I
blindsides
could see
them,
that.
and there's, like,
Yeah.
my Pilates teacher whom I love, like,
Mhm.
she's just so
Mhm.
amazing, and she's
Mhm.
complaining about, like, different fees and, certain things have changed with her business bank account, and
Okay.
I just gently I think I wore, like, my panties for Bitcoin t-shirt at a Pilates class,
Oh,
and I
nice.
just gently said, "Have you considered accepting
Mm.
Bitcoin payments?" And she's
Bitcoin?
like, "I don't know anything about that stuff." And I'm like, "She's a good teacher. I really like
Mhm.
her." And so I'm
Mhm.
going to be like super delicate with this.
Yeah, yeah. Would is she open to learning? Like how no, okay.
I think that
Yeah.
there would have to be something like really bad happening
Mm.
for like she would have to be desperate. Like I mean, she's an entrepreneur, she's got a really good business, she's very good at what she
Mhm.
does. She has
Mhm.
twins like and they're young. And
Wow.
so I
Yeah.
think that her mindset is that as long as it's working and I'm like
It's fine.
profitable, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you
I'm
see
just
that's
waiting patiently.
where I know, and I feel like I totally get that, but it also sucks because it's like they're only going to start when something goes wrong,
Yeah.
which again, I'm not saying it's their fault for not looking into it, but yeah, yeah, for many people, I think once it gets really bad is when they'll start taking it seriously. So let's hope it's not too late by then. But
So
We'll have
you
to see.
mentioned earlier, I think you made a comment about like having more women in Bitcoin, and you also mentioned
Mhm.
that you managed to get your nails done
Yes.
and pay for it in Bitcoin. So I'm making an
Yes.
assumption that the nail
Yeah.
technician was a woman. Is that
Yes, yes, she was a woman. So, okay, so technically the owner wasn't accepting Bitcoin.
Mhm.
So I still had to pay like my nail service with fiat, but I tipped her, like the nail
Okay.
technician that did my nails with Bitcoin. So I usually will try to do that. And I think that's a good way of getting more people to, get a little bit more accustomed to Bitcoin, especially when it's completely new. So we've tried this now at restaurants that we usually go to. We'll ask if the server has heard of Bitcoin and if they would accept their tip in Bitcoin. And you'd be surprised how many of them will say yes, because they're either one, curious about it, if you kind of just like walk them through what it is, like very simple, help them just download a wallet, and then actually like showing them how quickly money is being sent. I think it just like really opens, like they get like this, shocking face expression, and they're like, wow, like I didn't even think this was possible. Um, and if that doesn't work, another technique that also has worked is you still tip them in fiat and then say, we'll tip you additionally in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
usually a no-brainer. And at least now they've heard of it. We'll try to like point them in direction of like some, YouTube tutorials or, BTC sessions, something like that where they can learn a little bit more. So I try to do that at places where you're having a conversation with someone anyway, especially when you're getting your nails done, you're sitting there for hours. So you
Yeah.
might as well have a productive conversation. And this also happened with someone that I was getting my lashes done, and those take forever, right? And it was this, super young girl in Lima. We were in Peru. And she had her own business. She was an entrepreneur. She actually started talking to me about, just like saving and finances. And I was like,
Oh,
this is
good.
a perfect,
Good.
perfect little
Yeah.
segue. And so that's, like as women, we go and do all these amazing services that we do. We might as well tell all these other women that have these small businesses about Bitcoin during that time. That's what I, at least, it's helpful. It's helpful for them. And if they, are taking the initiative now, proactive, now they have something that they didn't have before. So,
I
yeah.
totally agree. It's like so I had Huddle Tarantula on the podcast and Miles Dillon. What
Mhm.
they have in common. So Huddle Tarantula is fully into Bitcoin mining, and he talks about like
Okay.
all the ways you can like extract energy. Like any type of energy can
Okay.
be put to use when it comes to Bitcoin mining.
Oh,
And Miles
cool.
Dillon, I don't know if you know him, but he was a plumber. He grew his
Okay.
business. He's an entrepreneur, and he's been saving in
Mhm.
Bitcoin since 2012.
Mhm.
And so he was
Wow,
talking about like,
2012.
yeah, I know.
Good for
He was
him.
talking
Good
about like
for him.
tradespeople, how they can incorporate Bitcoin
Ah.
into their business. Hodl Tarantula was
Hmm.
talking about tradespeople, like the transferable
Hmm.
skills that they can use in order to get
Hmm.
into the Bitcoin mining industry. And I'm like,
Hmm.
like, you know, and again, I'm sorry, people, if you think that I'm being sexist by saying this, but in my experience, most estheticians and nail technicians and people who do your eyebrows and stuff, they are women. And so to
They
me, it's
are.
almost like the equivalent, like
True.
like if you have your own business like this, figure out how to actually, add Bitcoin to your balance sheet so that you can really,
Mhm.
save and project long term. As you mentioned, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, the least, a business owner can do is just accept Bitcoin. Like, if you don't want to go and buy Bitcoin and do all of that,
Yeah.
you know, do all that, if you just accept Bitcoin, now you're earning Bitcoin without you having to go and buy it, right? And so that's a good way for you to just like get accustomed to it, and now your customers will know that you accept Bitcoin. Maybe most of them, let's be honest, probably won't pay you in Bitcoin, but you never know. You might get that
Yeah.
one random person, and then that one random person will tell another person of
Bitcoiner.
theirs
Yeah.
who exactly,
Because we
exactly.
talk a
So
lot. Like we
we
communicate,
do.
what's up? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have to obviously like take the opposite end of like this
Mhm,
discussion so that I'm not too
mhm.
biased. I'm trying to be like a bit neutral. Have
Yes.
you had negative experiences traveling with Bitcoin?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Actually, so I guess the not too many, but definitely like, if we do bring up Bitcoin and like, okay, the instance I said about if we, ask our server if they would accept Bitcoin as a tip, like, yes, majority of the time it is, sure, yes, what is it? Tell me more about it. But we've definitely gotten some people being like, no, not interested and kind of just like, don't want to talk to us about it. So there's that for sure.
yeah.
But the biggest one was actually we were in Egypt. And so Egypt is the only one I found that, at least from my experience, maybe there's other countries out there, but at least from the experience we've had, is Bitcoin is illegal in Egypt, which we didn't
Oh, is
know
it?
at that time. Yes. And we honestly didn't know, and that's like a learning lesson, good for you to check, because most countries don't usually have a stance on it. Like, it's
Hmm.
not like they're declaring it's legal or it's illegal. It's usually like you kind of just like in this gray zone because Bitcoin is new and we're all trying to figure it out. So we didn't really think anything of it, okay? But we were in this small town called Dahab, and it's by the water. It's by the Red Sea in Egypt. So there is
Hmm.
so much diving. It's very beautiful,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and a lot of nomads and expats go to that small town. It's a really strong community there. And so we spent about a month there, and there was this one juice shop we would always go to, and they had amazing juice, super fresh, and we became friends with the owner. And then at one point, we just started talking to him about Bitcoin, and he grasped the idea of it so quickly. And that's another thing. When you speak to people that are in unfortunate circumstances because of their country and the currency, they tend to pick up on Bitcoin way faster than people that are a little bit more, sitting in a more of a privileged position
Hmm.
per se, to make that comparison. And he got it. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll take Bitcoin." And so we started paying him in Bitcoin like once or twice, not all the time, because we know that, as a business owner, you have to
Yeah.
pay, your employees and things like that. So they still need their local currency. But we had like just a travel TikTok. At that time, we would post like random stuff. And so we posted this one TikTok where, my husband is paying him in Bitcoin and we're recording, and the owner is saying that, yeah, like I accept Bitcoin. And then we go on TikTok the next day, and we have like so many comments of locals saying that, take this video down right now. The owner is going to go to jail. This is illegal. This is not allowed.
Oh,
Take it off, take it off, take it off. And we're like, what the hell? Like, it was a little scary. And we obviously didn't want the owner to get in any trouble. So we deleted the
yeah.
video. But that was definitely probably one of the only kind of experiences we had where we were a little bit afraid. Um, but that's how we discovered that, you can't be vocal in Egypt
Mm.
if you're accepting Bitcoin. You can't have a sign
Yeah.
up that you're accepting Bitcoin. Um, you can't say anywhere on your website. So it's definitely a bit of a tricky situation there.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was a little scary for sure. That like,
Yeah, I can imagine. And were you guys
yeah.
still in Egypt when you saw the comments saying, take the sign
Yeah.
down? Or, oh, yeah, so
Yeah,
people
yeah,
could
yeah.
recognize you too.
Yeah, exactly. And so the good thing was, like, the owner didn't put a sign up, but he is in the video saying that his
Yeah.
juice shop accepts Bitcoin, so you can see the sign of his store. So that was in the video. And we thought we were just making like an educational video, like, look,
Yeah.
this juice shop accepts Bitcoin. But yeah, so, just a good learning lesson, like, before you go to a country and thinking that you can pay in Bitcoin or people will accept Bitcoin, it's just good to check the status of that country.
Yeah.
But honestly, I wouldn't even know where to go and check something like that. Like, where would you find a country declaring that they accept that it's illegal or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's not
it is
something.
it's complicated. And then like do government officials even know what Bitcoin is versus like Bitcoin Cash, for example? You know what I mean? Or is it just
Exactly.
cryptocurrency? Like
It's a
it's
crypto.
complicated.
Exactly. Yeah. So what does work in these instances is I usually go on Reddit or somewhere where there is a bit of a it's I feel like with social media now, I have a hard time finding out like which platform to go to where I'll actually get real people to reply to me or like real
Yeah.
like at least see like real things that are happening and it's not AI
Yeah.
or just some clickbait stuff. And I find that Reddit is usually really, really good for that. Like I've been on Reddit for years. I don't know if you're someone that goes on Reddit, but that is a good
Is
okay,
it?
no, okay. So
No,
yeah,
no, but
usually if I'm conflicted about
yeah.
a place or anything that I want like truth, like 100% authentic, honest review, Reddit is the place. And I think the reason is because that's just the kind of the community Reddit has brought together where people are super transparent about their opinions, but also there's no photos being shared, there's no videos, no one knows what you
Yeah.
look like. You can be completely honest and brutal about your opinions. Where I think with other social media platforms, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like so much of your who you
Yeah.
are as a person is associated with what you're saying that, I'm like, is what she's saying actually true or she's just saying that, right?
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, so Reddit is a good place to go if you're like, hey, like, how is a Bitcoin circular economy or is Bitcoin like you'll usually find a few threads here or there of people talking.
Oh, okay. I will. I have. I'm on Reddit, or I created an account. I don't know, like maybe 2 years ago, or maybe before
Years
that.
ago,
But
yeah.
I never go. I can't. I can't keep up with social media anymore. I try really
It's too
hard, but
much.
and
Yeah.
I don't care. That's the other thing too. I realized I'm like, actually, I don't care. Like, I
Yeah.
really don't care.
Don't care. And that is the right mindset to be in because once you start caring, it's just like this never ending friggin' dark hole of social media that anyway, that's probably a different topic,
Yeah, yeah.
but
So,
your
like,
but yeah.
X. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just want to make sure I'm like, did I answer her question? And I think I did because you asked what
Yeah,
was a negative experience, right? So yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That's pretty negative. Shop owner
Yeah.
arrested. You think you're doing good, and like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty negative. So how does because you've traveled around South America. Actually, I
Hmm.
think I had Coach John McGraw on the podcast last year. He was
Hmm.
organizing the Bitcoin conference in
Medellin.
Medellin. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think he may
Yeah.
have mentioned you as well.
Yeah. I
I
worked
think
with
so.
John.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you've traveled so that was in Colombia, you mentioned Lima,
Yes.
Peru. You've traveled
Hmm.
all over the African continent. You've obviously been to
East.
Switzerland.
Yes. Yeah.
And so of all the places that you
Hmm.
visited, this is going to be a big question because you've been to so many different places. You're in India now.
Okay. Yeah.
What would like where would you say right now is the
Hmm.
most Bitcoin friendly environment to be in?
Bitcoin friendly environment to be in.
Like El Salvador, for example, like or
Yeah.
Uganda, like you
Honest.
mentioned, because they're circular
Yes,
economies.
their circular economy. So I would say maybe I like answer this in two part. I think the obvious answer is like El Salvador, just because of what's going on there. But I do find that when you are, have you been to El Salvador, by the way?
Yeah, I was there in 2022.
Okay. So I'd love to know your experience in this as well. But I found that even though, yes, a lot of people, a lot of businesses did accept Bitcoin, we definitely had some conversations, whether it was like Uber drivers or taxi drivers, where they're like, yeah, we accept Bitcoin, but we don't really know what it is. We're
Yeah.
doing it because, our government told us to do it at that point in time. And so there was definitely a huge gap. And
Mhm.
yes, we accept Bitcoin to what it actually is because yes they're accepting it but then boom they're converting it back into because it's US dollars they're just
Yeah.
converting it back, right? So I would say outside of El Salvador, Lugano actually was definitely very Bitcoin friendly. And I'm sure you experienced that. So like kind of anywhere we went, we were able to pay in Bitcoin. So that was amazing. But I guess outside of kind of like Europe and the West, I would say South Africa is actually a pretty good one too.
Mm.
We spent some time in Cape Town, and one of their biggest grocery a grocery store does accept Bitcoin. It is through like this third party wallet. It's an interesting
Yeah,
situation, but at that point, it was like a pretty big deal that they accepted Bitcoin. There's a huge community there in Cape Town. There's like three different circular economies. We spent some time in Johannesburg, which is a little bit north of Cape Town,
yeah,
and we visited, I think, like five different businesses. Someone that made like like backpacks, like leather backpacks, someone that made like really cool, like jean denim jackets. Um, we went to like a few like restaurants. We went to actually a math tutor who accepted Bitcoin as
oh,
well
sweet.
as a
I love that.
teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah, so definitely South Africa, and I know, and that was almost 2 years ago. So I know it's grown since then as well. And then of course Kenya now with Tando.
hmm,
Uh, it makes it very, very easy. You can pretty much pay for anything in Bitcoin. And so for people that don't know Tando, I'm not gonna explain it the right way, but ultimately it is an app that you can use to pay for any sort of service in Bitcoin, and then it automatically converts it, and then they pay the business owner or the individual in the local currency. And because most of the payment, most of the infrastructure in East Africa is digital anyway, like a lot of it is
yeah,
just done through your phone. Like cash is not really even a big thing unless
yeah,
you're going out to like some of the small vendors. People are just, a lot more accepting of Tando and
yeah,
how it works. So
yeah.
yeah,
Because they
I know I was
had
supposed to give you one, but I gave you a
yeah,
bunch.
but this is good, and this is the
Yeah,
point, right? There isn't just
yeah,
one. I
yeah.
think in Kenya they had M-Pesa, or maybe they still have
M-Pesa.
M-Pesa,
They
and
still
so
definitely have M-Pesa. Yeah.
they were able to kind of like leapfrog Western countries, you know?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
um I went uh, when was it? In February? My notion of time is just not good right now. So I think it was in February. It was
Okay.
winter break. So we went
Hmm.
skiing for the week,
Hmm.
and we went skiing in France at a station called Léger.
Ooh,
They
okay.
Everything is in euros. I'm in
Hmm.
Switzerland.
Oh.
Everything is in Swiss francs. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we go and pay for like ski lift passes. Everything is, like digital, I'll say.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I decided to, because my daughter was taking ski lessons and my husband wanted to do something else, and I wanted to book a day where I just went snowshoeing in the Alps. Like it was so wonderful. It
Oh,
was so
sounds
beautiful.
beautiful.
Oh my goodness, the
Yeah.
snow was like over a
Nice.
meter deep. It was just wonderful. And so I
Wow.
go to reserve my spot, and it's one guy who does this. Like it's his side hustle kind of thing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I go to reserve, and they're like, I think the total was 45 euros, 30 euros to book your
Hmm.
spot, 15 euros to rent the snowshoes.
Okay.
And they're like, we only accept cash or check. Check. Like a
Check.
checkbook? Check. And
Who
I was like,
who even does that anymore?
"Go here, and I promise you they'll say cash or check." And I'm like, "Okay, well,
Wow.
I don't have a checkbook." And so,
Yeah.
and I didn't have Euro cash because I don't have any need for Euro cash, and so
Gosh.
I didn't have any cash. And so the woman was like, "Okay, go to the ATM that's just over there and withdraw." 45 euros in cash I needed. I go to the ATM, look at the options. I wanted, so I say, "Okay, I'm gonna withdraw 50
Mhm.
euros because I
Mhm.
don't want
Mhm.
euros on me." Do you know
Yeah.
what they wanted to charge me?
Like
6
10 years.
euros.
Oh
Over
God.
10% to withdraw
It's
cash.
crazy. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. But why didn't they just accept even card? Like, how tough is it to accept a credit card these days?
Well, I think because okay, I'm not clear on his business status. If you know
Okay.
anything about France, the bureaucracy is just like it is a nightmare. I don't
Is
understand it. I
it?
don't wanna understand it. It's really bad, and
I didn't
so
know. Okay.
maybe because, you know what I mean, he doesn't wanna declare everything fully, he's just accepting cash payments.
Um,
Maybe, I don't know. But it's
mm,
like cash only, and I'm like, "I'm paying 10%." And so I was like, "Do I mention Bitcoin in this situation?" You know what I mean? Like,
oh
is he going
God,
to, like,
yes.
'cause he's like an environmentalist as well, is he gonna tell me that it's bad for the environment? Like, but I was
Mm,
like, how and at the same token, I'm not poo-pooing on French people, but they're still very sort of arrogant towards Africans, you know, like, who are,
is
you
it?
know, so not
Oh
all
gosh.
French Bitcoiners are the most base people ever. They do not count in what I'm saying at all. But
Gotcha. It's then
if you go
none
to
of them
like,
Bitcoiners.
yeah, sort of
Mm,
conservative, traditional French, whatever, they're still very like, you
mm,
know, we're whatever. And
mm,
I'm like,
mm,
you don't even realize how you are being leapfrogged by small communities, by some countries, because,
totally.
you know, like history is
You're too
such that they
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say because you're too full of yourself. You're not realizing it
Exactly.
because yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, but I interrupted you. Please
Yeah,
continue.
but it's like I was gonna say the same thing, you know, like, because
Yeah.
you've been built up, again, this matrix thing,
Mhm.
you've never traveled,
Mhm.
you've never seen how things are done elsewhere, and so check or
Yeah.
cash and "C'est comme ça, madame," you know, like, that's how it
Yeah.
is kinda thing,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, fine," you know, I'm gonna bite the bullet
Wait,
because I really want go ahead.
did you mention Bitcoin to him and you were just like you're like, "I'm not. This is not worth the uphill battle."
No, I didn't. I looked
No.
at because
Okay.
it was, and plus the woman, she gave me the wrong information the day before. She looked at me, she's like, "Check her ca," and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
mention it."
this
So
is
I bit the bullet.
not
I paid the
worth
fee.
it.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
paid
Yeah.
10%. I wanted to vomit. I'm like, "This cannot be real," but,
I know. That's like equivalent to like 15 Canadian dollars. That's a lot.
yeah.
Man, yeah. So, yes.
So traveling with Bitcoin. So before we close out,
Yeah.
the interview, is there any,
Mhm.
like, anything, any words, gentle words of encouragement you'd wanna leave with, the audience, especially if there are women watching?
Yeah, I would say I think the biggest thing, in this space and the way to kind of get into this space, I shouldn't even say that. It is for everyone, but ultimately I think honestly all you need is a little bit of open mind and curiosity and just asking questions and not feeling like you have to know everything about Bitcoin to get started because I'm still very new. I learn something new every day. There's times where there's certain topics that I just cannot understand and I'm reading about them multiple times. And I think a lot of us that are in the Bitcoin space are kind of in the same boat. We're learning from each
Mhm.
other. We're trying to figure this out. We are all a lot of us are trying to build businesses that, sometimes they don't work out. You're evolving. And so we're all asking questions. We're all being open-minded. And I think that's really what it is just be willing to understand the different perspective and then make your own opinions based on that is what I can and end with. Yeah.
You are lovely. You're so nice.
Thank you.
Where can people find you if they have more, like, Bitcoin
um
travel questions?
Yeah, please. You can find me literally my website is called travelwithbitcoin.com. As soon as we came up with the idea, the first thing we did was grab the domain. So travelwithbitcoin.com, or you can also find me Travel with Bitcoin on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, but not very active. So I would say Twitter is definitely the best way, where I'm more active and posting about what we're going to be up to.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Anuja.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.